I'm awake, getting my positive mental attitude on, got no food stamps, no money, and no one calling to help me. However, I think all the help that I get is help that I don't see, and I thank God for that. Positive mental attitude.
Have you met Mr. Wells before?
Mr. Wells, you make Wimpy look skimpy.
Well, you see, I'm fat and you're ugly, but I can diet. I think I'm going to lock up early. Are you a card-carrying communist? Of course, I've never been even faintly pro-communist, but I am on the progressive side, as I imagine you've guessed. But I said, will you define what a communist is? And this is when they fell in the trap. They said, what do you mean? I said, well, just, I want to answer your question honestly. How can I answer your question if you don't tell me what you mean? Well, what's communist? Well, I guess it's where whatever you make goes to the government. I said, well, I'm 86% communist. The rest is capitalist. Well, he was what you might call a swinger. In the 15th century, they didn't call them swingers, but they swung. And nobody more so than Sir John. He was a funny man, he was a fat man, but he was a great man. He was a wit, and as he said himself, he was not only witty in himself, but the cause that wit was in other men. This huge hill of fat, this ton of man, this reverend vice, this gray iniquity. He was a spokesman, you might say, for Merry England, the old Merry England of May mornings and midsummer eves, when even villainy was innocent. He had a great friend who was the Prince of Wales, who was also by way of one of the boys. But Falstaff was more than that. He was Sir John Falstaff, but among the knights, he was a knightly dropout. You might almost say that he was he was the great-great-grandfather of all the flower children. He was a bohemian. And he was a bum. He was a beautiful bum. He was a great expert on wine, women, and song. And what he's going to say for you now is a little tribute to wine. And matter of fact, to a particular kind of wine, sherry, which in those days was called sherry sack. Now, sherry, as you know, a sherry sack was fortified and is fortified with brandy. It's strong drink, and this is Shakespeare's first and greatest of all commercials for the subject of booze. Sherry sack. These sober-blooded boys do not love me, nor a man cannot make them laugh. And that's no marvel. They drink no wine. There's never none of these demure boys come to any proof for thin drink that so overcool their blood that they are generally fools and cowards, which some of us should be too, but for inflammation. A good sherry sack hath a twofold operation in it. It ascends me into the brain, and dries me there all the foolish and dull and cruddy vapors which environ it, makes it apprehensive, quick forgettive, full of nimble, fiery, and delectable shapes, which delivered o'er to the voice, the tongue, which is the birth, becomes excellent wit. The second property of your excellent chalice is the warming of the blood. The sheriff warms it and makes it course from the inwards to the parts extreme. It illumineth the face, which is a beacon, gives warning to all the rest of this little kingdom man to arm. And then the commoners muster me all to their captain, the heart who great and puffed up with this retinue doth any deed of courage. This valor comes of sheriffs, and hereof comes it that Prince Harry is valiant. For the cold blood he did naturally inherit of his father. He hath like lean, sterile, and bare land manured, husbanded, and tilled with excellent endeavor of drinking good and good store of fertile sheriffs, that he's become very hot and valiant. If I had 1,000 sons, the first humane principle I would teach them should be this: to forswear thin potations, and to addict themselves to sack.
$25, weren't you? I mean, everybody knows that you had the most astonishing contract that Hollywood has ever provided.
Yes.
Ever.
Not financially speaking, in terms of authority and
Yes.
rights. Financially, it wasn't extraordinary in any way at all. It was extraordinary in the control it gave me over my own material.
You had total control.
Total control, so much so that the rushes, which I perhaps should explain that are the pieces of film that are shown at the end of the day's work, as I'm sure you understand, and are always checked by everybody in the studio, department heads and the bankers and distributors and everything, long before there's a rough cut. But according to the terms of my contract, the rushes couldn't be seen by anyone. And indeed, the film couldn't be seen until it was ready for release. I got that good a contract because I didn't really want to make a film.
Well, you better develop that.
And you know, when you don't really want to go out to Hollywood, at least this was true in the old days, the golden days of Hollywood, when you honestly didn't want to go, then the deals got better and better. In my case, I didn't want money. I wanted authority. So I asked the impossible, hoping to be left alone. And at the end of a year's negotiations, I got it.
Yes.
Simply because there was no real vocation there. My love for films began only when we started work.
What I'd like to know is, where did you get the confidence from to make a film with such...
Ignorance. Sheer ignorance. You know, there's no confidence to equal it. It's only when you know something about a profession, I think, that you're timid or careful.
How does ignorance show itself?
I thought you could do anything with a camera that the eye could do or the imagination could do. And if you come up from the bottom in the film business, you're taught all the things that the cameraman doesn't want to attempt for fear he will be criticized for having failed.
Yes.
And in this case, I had a cameraman who didn't care if he was criticized if he failed, and I didn't know that there were things you couldn't do. So anything I could think up in my dreams, I attempted to photograph.
You got away with enormous technical advances, didn't you?
Simply by not knowing that they were impossible, or theoretically impossible.
Yeah.
And of course, again, I had a great advantage not only in the real genius of my cameraman, but in the fact that he, like all great men, I think, who are masters of a craft, told me right at the outset that there was nothing about camera work that I couldn't learn in half a day, that any intelligent person couldn't learn in half a day. And he was right.
It's true, an awful lot of things.
Of all, you know, of every, you know, the great mystery that requires 20 years doesn't exist in any field. And certainly not in the camera.
Sometimes the problem is not the real problem. It is the way we look at that problem can be the real problem. So when you change your mindset, when you change your perspective, you will realize that there's nothing to worry about it. Namo Buddhaya.
Hey, I don't know if y'all ever heard of Flint, Michigan, right? Or if y'all ever heard of Camp Lejeune, right? Some people get that, and the rest of us get this. Like I said, I don't know if you ever heard of Flint, Michigan, or Camp Lejeune. My friends, my family members, my brothers and sisters, people who love people and want people to flourish. Yeah, I mean, like, how do you dig on that? I mean, how do you dig any of that? Any of it? I was just about to go to CVS to get a metal can to make a bowl out of because I didn't have money to buy a can. When I saw a man lying in the park, facing up, kind of spaced out, convulsing, unresponsive almost. I called 911 at 8:34. It's 9:52. I'm a block and a half from the White House. I think he's probably still under this umbrella right here. What do you do when you call 911 next to the White House and they just don't even respond and this motherfucker he's laying here in the rain and the ambulance drove by went the wrong way. Somebody put plastic on him. And what do y'all think about that? So whoever fucking overcalls these stupid ass emergency calls, this man hopefully ain't dead. Literally. Where's 911? And the White House is right there. Literally right over there.